Hello there and welcome to Just About Earth, where curiosity stretches its legs and takes the scenic route, while your mind finds a comfortable place to settle. Tonight we're going to explore a question that can sit quietly in the back of your head for years before suddenly demanding your full attention. It's not a question with a clear answer, it's not even a question everyone would want to think about for too long, but it's one that can make you tilt your head and see everything in your life from a different angle. The question is simple enough to say out loud, yet complicated enough to change how you feel about almost everything. What if Earth was a test, not a figure of speech, not a clever metaphor, a real test, the kind that is set up on purpose, the kind that has an observer, the kind where your choices, your struggles, and the way you live might actually be recorded, reviewed, and evaluated? Maybe it's a higher intelligence that designed it. Maybe it's an ancient power we used to call gods. Maybe it's an alien civilization from somewhere so far away that we would never notice their presence. Or maybe, and this is where it gets even stranger, it's us. Future humans reaching back through time or through technology, setting the stage for their own ancestors and watching how the story plays out. You might have already felt flashes of this idea before, even if you didn't call it that. Times when life feels strangely staged, when things line up a little too neatly, when someone enters your life at the exact moment you need them, or an event happens that seems engineered to make you question yourself. And yet, before we wander too far into possibilities, I'd like to ask you something much smaller. Where in the world are you listening from right now? Are you somewhere that feels familiar? Or are you traveling? Is it daytime or night where you are? The world is spread out across so many time zones, and yet here we are, arriving in the same moment together. Your version of now might be bright with morning light, or it might be wrapped in shadows and quiet. If you're listening while winding down, maybe this will be a calm companion to the end of your day. If you're starting fresh, maybe this will be a steady hum in the background as you step into whatever comes next. If you find this kind of slow exploration enjoyable, if it's the sort of conversation that you like to drift into, it would mean a lot if you gave the video a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. That helps this small space find others who might be looking for something thoughtful to end their day or start it. And now that we've set the pace, we can begin to walk through this idea together without rushing. Because thinking about Earth as a test isn't about finding an answer as quickly as possible. It's about noticing what changes in the way you see things when you keep that question in the background. The first thing that comes to mind is that the word test doesn't always mean the same thing to everyone. In school it might have meant rows of desks, a sheet of paper with small boxes to fill, and a clock on the wall making each second feel heavier. In life, a test can mean much more than that. It can be a measure of what you've learned without realizing you were learning it. A way to see how you react under pressure or how you behave when no one is telling you what to do. In this thought experiment, Earth as a test doesn't have to mean we're all sitting in the same room taking the same questions. It could mean each person is facing their own unique version of it, tailored in ways they don't even notice. You might already be thinking about the conditions that make life here possible, the strange balance of factors that let us exist at all. Earth is neither too close to the sun, nor too far. It has the right mix of elements, the right atmosphere, the right protection from radiation. Its magnetic field shields us from solar winds that could strip the planet bare. Its orbit is stable. Its seasons are predictable enough to let life plan ahead. When scientists talk about the Goldilocks zone around a star, they're describing planets that are just right for life as we know it. But if Earth is a test, these conditions might not just be lucky accidents. They might be the carefully chosen settings of an exam designed to see what life would do if given the perfect starting ground. That raises another thought. If this is a test, what are the questions being asked? Are they about survival? Whether we can adapt to changing climates, natural disasters, or the endless list of diseases that try to take us down? Are they about morality? How we treat each other when resources are scarce or when we have too much? Are they about cooperation? Whether we can work together despite differences in language, culture, and belief? Maybe they're about something we haven't even considered, some hidden variable that is the real point of all of this. You might be wondering if there's any sign that we're being observed, and if there is, whether we'd even recognize it. If a higher intelligence wanted to see how we behave naturally, they'd not exactly make themselves obvious. They'd stay hidden, letting events unfold without interference. Or perhaps their interference would be so subtle that we'd mistake it for chance. A sudden change in weather that forces two strangers to meet. A small sequence of events that keeps you from taking a certain path one day. It's easy to write these off as coincidence, but if Earth were a test, those moments could be more like controlled variables in an experiment. Of course, this idea isn't entirely new. Many ancient cultures and religions have taught that life is a kind of trial. In some beliefs, the purpose is to see if you live according to certain moral laws, with the outcome determining your fate after death. In others, it's a journey meant to teach the soul lessons it couldn't learn any other way. The details vary wildly, but the core idea that we're here for a reason beyond just existing appears again and again. In that sense, thinking about Earth as a test isn't so much inventing a new concept as it is looking at an old one with fresh eyes. Some people find that idea comforting. If life is a test, then suffering isn't meaningless. Struggles have a purpose even if we don't know exactly what it is. Others find it unsettling because it suggests we're constantly being judged, and that there might be consequences we can't see coming. Either way, it changes how you might look at your day-to-day life. The moments when you're kind to someone for no reason, the decisions you make when no one is watching, the way you respond when things go wrong. If these are all part of an assessment, it makes you notice them differently. There's also the possibility that the test isn't about individuals at all, but about humanity as a whole. Maybe it's less about whether you or I personally pass and more about whether our species can reach certain milestones, develop sustainable ways to live, avoid wiping ourselves out with our own technology, learn to communicate without turning every disagreement into a war. If that's the case, then every generation might just be another round of data collection, another group of participants in a long-running study. It's hard not to think about the big events in history when you look at it that way. The sudden rises and falls of civilizations, the repeating patterns of conflict and peace, the breakthroughs in science, and the setbacks that follow. From a certain angle, it can all look like the progress reports of a long-term experiment, one that has been running for thousands of years, maybe even longer. If you've ever heard the phrase trial by fire, you might recognize that this idea has a lot in common with how humans already test themselves. We create challenges to push ourselves beyond comfort. We set rules and see if we can follow them. We invent games and competitions that have no real-world necessity just to see who can overcome obstacles. If we do this to ourselves for entertainment or personal growth, it's not impossible to imagine that someone or something might be doing it to us on a much larger scale. And here's where it starts to get interesting. If this is a test, we might not be graded on the outcome alone. We might be graded on the process, on how we handle the test itself. If we panic, if we cheat, if we give up, or if we persist even when the questions are harder than anything we've prepared for, the way we approach the unknown could be the real measure. Which means that even asking the question, what if Earth is a test, might itself be part of it? If you never consider it, maybe you're meant to go through life focusing on the here and now. If you do consider it, maybe the next step is to see what you do with that thought. And so as we settle into this line of thinking, we'll keep walking forward. We'll look at how the planet seems built for life, how the challenges we face might be more than random chance, and how stories from the past to the present might all be pointing to the same strange possibility. If you sit quietly with the idea that Earth might be a test, the first thing that happens is the world around you starts to look slightly different. The chair you're sitting in, the walls around you, the sound in the background, even the way the air feels on your skin. They all take on a strange quality, as if they're part of a setting that was arranged, rather than just something that happened to be there. It's a bit like walking into a room you've been in 100 times, and suddenly noticing a detail you've never seen before. The place hasn't changed, you have. That's what makes this thought so persistent. It's not something you can entirely prove or disprove. But once you've considered it, you start running everyday life through a new filter. The long commute you've always hated. Is it just an inconvenience? Or is it meant to teach you patience? The sudden challenge you didn't expect, bad luck, or part of an intentional obstacle course? Even the people you meet, the ones who seem to appear at exactly the right or wrong moment, start to look like pieces on a board that someone else has arranged. It's worth noticing how often humans naturally fall into this way of thinking without even trying. We talk about everything happens for a reason when events line up in a way that feels meaningful. We tell stories about fate, destiny, and being meant to cross paths with certain people. Whether you take those phrases literally or not, they show that we're comfortable with the idea that there might be more to life than random chance. If Earth is a test, then those moments of alignment could be the hints, subtle nudges that there's a structure beneath the surface. But the real weight of this question doesn't come from the possibility that we're being tested. It comes from realizing what that would imply. If this is a test, then there's a purpose to the design. That means the conditions here, the good, the bad, the things that make no sense, and the things that seem perfectly balanced aren't just accidents. They're chosen. Every storm, every illness, every technological breakthrough, every stretch of peace, every war could be a part of the exam. That's where the thought stops being like curiosity and starts becoming heavier. This isn't about paranoia. It's not about imagining that there's a shadowy figure watching you through hidden cameras. It's about zooming out so far in your imagination that you can look at the entire planet and everything on it as one connected system. Picture it from space. Not just the continents and oceans, but the constant swirl of clouds, the pulse of city lights at night, the shifting patterns of weather, the migrations of animals, the movements of people. It's a living, breathing sphere, where billions of individual lives are happening all at once. Each person thinking they're simply going through their own story. If there's a designer, they're watching all of it together. The same way you might look at the screen of a strategy game and see every unit moving in real time. When you put it like that, the next thought comes quickly. What would the goal be? If you were the one running this experiment, what would you want to know? Would you be looking for the most adaptable individuals, the kindest, the most intelligent? Or would you be watching for the group as a whole to reach a certain point before deciding they've passed? You could imagine hundreds of possible objectives, from moral development to technological achievement, to some unknown quality that we don't even have a name for. Ancient traditions leaned heavily toward morality. In many belief systems, the test of life is about how you treat others, whether you follow certain rules, whether you act with compassion and integrity, even when it's difficult. The reward for passing might be entry into a paradise, moving on to another existence, or simply avoiding punishment. But in modern thought, especially in scientific speculation, the scope is much broader. If the observer is an alien civilization or future humans, their interest might not be in individual morality at all. They might be measuring survival instincts, problem-solving, creativity, or the ability to cooperate on a global scale. What makes this line of thought more compelling is that tests often don't reveal their real purpose until they're over. Sometimes you're told you're being measured on one thing when in reality you're being measured on something else entirely. In training programs, games, and even psychological experiments, the stated goal is often a distraction. The real data comes from how you react when you think you're being tested for something different. If Earth is like that, the things we think matter most might be the wrong metrics entirely. Then there's the question of whether the participants, us, are meant to know it's a test. In many situations, awareness changes behavior. If you know you're being graded, you might try harder. You might also try to game the system. That could be why. If there is an observer, they'd prefer to remain hidden. Or maybe the awareness itself is one of the questions. What do people do when they begin to suspect there's more going on than meets the eye? Do they seek answers, try to communicate with whoever is in charge, or ignore it entirely? It's also possible that the test is layered. At the smallest scale, each of us might be evaluated individually. How we handle our personal hardships, how we treat others, whether we keep going when things get difficult. At the larger scale, the species might be evaluated collectively, whether we destroy ourselves, whether we find a way to live sustainably, whether we spread beyond our planet. If both levels are in play, then the experiment becomes far more complex, with individual choices rippling out into the larger group's outcome. History offers plenty of material for that kind of analysis. Civilizations rise, innovate, and fall. New ones grow in their place, often making the same mistakes, sometimes learning from the past, sometimes forgetting it entirely. Technology transforms the way we live, opening possibilities our ancestors couldn't have imagined, but also creating dangers they never faced. We cooperate when it's convenient, compete when it's not, and in the process, shape the future for everyone. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of contradictions, which makes it exactly the kind of environment that would generate interesting results if someone were observing. And that brings us to the unsettling part. If it is a test, then it's not necessarily a safe one. Tests can be designed to push you to your limits. They can be timed with a set endpoint that you don't know about. They can be structured so that only some pass. They can include trick questions, distractions, and moments where the wrong move cost you more than you expected. None of that would feel fair if you didn't know it was a test. But fairness might not be the point. The point could be to see what you do under exactly those conditions. It's not all grim. If the test is meant to measure growth, creativity, or problem solving, then every challenge is also an opportunity to succeed. Every unexpected turn is a chance to prove adaptability. The moments that seem most like setbacks could be the ones that count the most toward whatever the final result is. It's just that, without knowing the scoring system, we can't be sure. That's part of what makes the question so powerful. It forces you to think about what's worth doing, even when you don't know how you're being evaluated. And so, the question keeps changing the way you see things. You can't help but look at the structure of the world, the balance between order and chaos, the way life clings to every corner of the planet, the way humanity keeps pushing forward despite every obstacle, and wonder if that balance is the key, whether we're meant to find a way to live with it, to change it, or to learn from it. You start to notice that even small choices could matter more than they seem. That kindness to a stranger, persistence in the face of boredom, curiosity about the unknown. All of them might be quiet parts of a much bigger evaluation. The question doesn't go away once you've asked it. It just waits in the background, reshaping the way you notice patterns, coincidences, and challenges. And once it's there, it's only natural to start looking at the conditions of the planet itself, the stage where all of this happens, and wondering if its design offers more clues. If you imagine Earth as a testing ground, the first thing you'd probably want to do is examine the setup, the environment, the stage, and when you start doing that, the planet begins to look suspiciously well prepared for the role. It's as if someone went through a checklist, making sure that conditions were balanced just enough to make life possible, but not so easy that it would be effortless. The more you look at the details, the more they start to feel like part of a deliberate configuration. The obvious starting point is distance from the sun. Too close and the heat would strip away the atmosphere, boil the oceans, and fry anything trying to exist on the surface. Too far, and we'd be locked in permanent ice. Our planet a frozen sphere with nothing but wind and shadow. But here we are orbiting at a range that is almost suspiciously perfect. The so-called Goldilocks zone. We get warmth without being incinerated, sunlight without being cooked alive, and that's just the first setting. The tilt of the planet axis seems equally intentional. At roughly 23.5 degrees it gives us seasons. Not too extreme in most places, not absent entirely. Those seasons shape agriculture, animal behavior, and the rhythms of human life. If the tilt were much greater, weather would be violent and unstable, with half the planet enduring extremes that might make civilization impossible. If it were much smaller, the climate would be static, lessening variety and reducing some of the pressures that drive adaptation. From a testing perspective, seasons make sense. They require life to adapt, to plan, to change behaviors. They introduce a predictable but still challenging pattern to existence. Then there's the moon. It's unusually large compared to the size of the Earth, and it sits at just the right distance to create tides that stir the oceans without flooding continents. Those tides may have been critical to the development of early life, creating coastal zones where nutrients and conditions shifted regularly, driving evolution forward. The moon also stabilizes Earth's rotation, preventing chaotic wobbles that could make the climate unpredictable. In a test, stability in the long term combined with manageable short-term challenges is an excellent way to see how life evolves. The moon's presence checks both boxes. Our atmosphere is another strangely precise feature. It's thick enough to shield us from meteors and radiation, yet thin enough to let in the sunlight we need. It holds the right mix of gases, mostly nitrogen and oxygen, with just enough carbon dioxide to help regulate temperature without tipping into a runaway greenhouse effect, at least until humans began altering that balance. If the air were much different in composition, we wouldn't be here. Oxygen at too high a concentration could make fires uncontrollable. Nitrogen at too low a level could destabilize processes life depends on. It's all finely tuned in a way that feels less like random chance and more like careful calibration. Even the magnetic field fits the pattern. Generated by movement in Earth's molten core, it deflects solar wind and cosmic radiation which would otherwise strip away our atmosphere over time. Mars, for example, lacks a strong magnetic field, and its thin atmosphere can't protect it the way ours does. Without that invisible shield, Earth would be far more vulnerable to bursts of solar energy that could damage ecosystems and disrupt any emerging civilizations. If you were designing a long-term experiment with complex participants, you'd want to give them protection from catastrophic interruptions, not complete safety, but enough to let the test run for billions of years. Water, too, sits in a sweet spot. We have a global system where it exists in all three states, solid, liquid, and gas, moving constantly between them. That cycle regulates climate, supports diverse ecosystems, and provides the variety of environments needed for different forms of life to emerge. A test without variety would produce narrow results. By contrast, Earth's range of environments, deserts, rainforests, tundras, oceans, mountains, pushes life to adapt in countless ways. The outcome is a biosphere so diverse that no single catastrophe wipes it all out. That kind of resilience could be exactly what you'd want to measure. The planet's geology plays a part as well. Plate tectonics not only shape continents and create mountains, but also recycle carbon, regulate temperature over geological timescales, and generate fertile soils through volcanic activity. Without that process, Earth might have stagnated, its surface becoming unchanging and lifeless. With it, the world is in a constant state of renewal, creating opportunities for new species to emerge and thrive. From the perspective of a test, geological change is like hitting the reset button in certain areas without shutting down the whole system. Even the dangerous aspects of Earth start to look like deliberate design when you consider them in this light. Hurricanes, earthquakes, droughts, and volcanic eruptions cause immense suffering and destruction. But they also force adaptation. They push societies to develop technology, cooperation, and long-term planning. They test resilience on both an individual and collective level. A perfectly safe, unchanging world might be comfortable, but it wouldn't reveal much about how life responds to pressure. When scientists talk about the improbability of life emerging here, they often mention the sheer number of factors that had to align. It's not just one or two lucky breaks. It's dozens of them. The sun is unusually stable for a star of its size. Our solar system has giant planets like Jupiter that act as gravitational shields, deflecting comets and asteroids that might otherwise smash into Earth far more often. The chemical composition of the planet matches exactly what's needed for biological processes, down to trace elements that are rare elsewhere. Some people point to this as evidence of fine-tuning. Others see it as the inevitable result of the anthropic principle, the idea that we can only observe a universe that allows for our existence. So of course it looks perfect to us, but if you lean into the test scenario, that fine-tuning is simply the setup. The experiment begins with a starting environment where success is possible, but not guaranteed. That way you can see what happens when life is given a near-perfect foundation and then challenged with unpredictable changes. It's also worth noting how fragile some of these balances are. Tilt the conditions too far in one direction and the whole system collapses. Ice ages can lock away huge portions of the planet's water for thousands of years. Shifts in atmospheric composition can tip the climate into inhospitable extremes. Large impacts from space can reset the evolutionary clock. And yet, despite at least 5 mass extinction events in the last half-billion years, life has returned each time, often in new and more complex forms. From a certain point of view, that's exactly what you'd want to see in a test. Not perfection without struggle, but recovery after devastation. When you think about how life has navigated these cycles, you start to notice that the test, if it exists, isn't just about survival in the short term. It's about persistence over spans of time so long that our species can barely comprehend them. From the earliest microorganisms to the rise of mammals, the planet has been a proving ground for endurance, innovation, and adaptation. We are simply the latest participants in a process that has been running for billions of years. And that leads to the uncomfortable possibility that we're not the first intelligent species to take part. If Earth has been set up to produce complexity, then intelligence might not be unique to us. It could have arisen before in forms that left no trace we've found yet, and then vanished. Whether through self-destruction, environmental collapse, or forces beyond their control, they might have failed their version of the test. If that's true, then our existence is just the latest iteration, and the conditions we see now might be the refined result of many previous runs. Looking at it this way, every part of the natural world, from the predictable orbit of the moon to the deep ocean currents, starts to feel like an intentional variable in a massive ongoing trial. The question then shifts from, is Earth perfect for life, to why was it made perfect enough for life to thrive, but imperfect enough for life to be constantly challenged? That's where the test hypothesis starts to gain weight. A perfect paradise wouldn't push growth. A hostile wasteland wouldn't allow it. This in-between state, balanced on the edge of stability and chaos, is exactly where the most revealing results would emerge. When you step outside and look around with this in mind, the details hit differently. The way trees pull carbon dioxide from the air and give back oxygen. The way pollinators keep entire ecosystems functioning. the way weather shifts just enough to keep you guessing. All of it starts to feel less like the background noise of life and more like a carefully constructed environment tuned to see what you'll do with it. And if the stage is this finely built, then the next question is about the script, whether the challenges and opportunities within this setting are as deliberate as the conditions themselves. Because if the planet has been prepared with such precision, it would be strange if the events that take place here were purely random. If the planet itself feels like a stage that's been set for something, the next thing to notice is that life here doesn't happen without a set of rules. We may not remember agreeing to them. We may not even fully understand them, but they're there and they shape everything we do from the moment we arrive until the moment we leave. Some of them are obvious, written into the laws of physics and biology. Others are subtle, invisible boundaries we only notice when we bump against them. And if Earth really is a test, these rules could be the hidden instructions, the fine print of the exam, the part you never get to read until it's already over. The most unavoidable one is simple. Time moves forward. No matter what you do, you can't slow it, pause it, or reverse it. You can't go back to redo a moment or skip ahead to see how something turns out. Every choice you make locks in the path behind you and reshapes the one ahead. In a test, that would be one of the most effective rules of all. If you can't see the outcome in advance, you have to decide based on the information you have now, and you have to live with the consequences. That alone can reveal a lot about character, judgment, and adaptability. Then there's the physical vulnerability we all share. Bodies need food, water, and rest. They're subject to injury and illness. They wear out over time. None of us gets to opt out of this limitation. In a way, it levels the playing field. No matter where you start, you're bound by the same basic needs. In a test scenario, this ensures that survival is never automatic. It has to be earned day after day by meeting those needs despite whatever else might be happening. Pain, both physical and emotional, might be another built-in rule. It's a signal that something is wrong, but it's also a teacher. Pain changes behavior. It pushes you to avoid certain actions and to seek out solutions. It can deepen empathy when you see someone else suffering in a way you understand. If this were a designed environment, pain would be an essential tool. Without it, there's no immediate feedback for bad choices or dangerous situations. With it, there's constant data about how we respond to difficulty. Whether we avoid it, face it, or use it as a reason to help others. Loss is another rule that seems to be everywhere. Nothing and no one here is permanent. People, possessions, opportunities, all of them can disappear, sometimes without warning. In a test, that could be intentional, a way to see how participants handle change that they can't prevent. Do they cling to what's gone, adapt to what's left, or build something new entirely? In everyday life, loss feels personal, but in the larger picture, it could be one of the most revealing measures of all. On top of the universal rules, there are the ones that come from the societies we live in. These aren't fixed by nature, they're made by people, but they're just as real in their effects. Laws, customs, and unwritten expectations shape what's acceptable, what's rewarded, and what's punished. They vary from place to place, which makes them even more interesting from a testing perspective. Someone growing up in one part of the world might be praised for something that's frowned upon elsewhere. That variation could be part of the design, a way to see how people navigate conflicting systems, or whether they question the rules they're given. And then there are the rules that seem almost designed to create tension. Resources are limited. There isn't enough of everything for everyone to have as much as they want. That scarcity forces decisions. Do you share or take more for yourself? Do you compete or cooperate? Do you hoard out of fear or trust that you'll get what you need? In a cooperative game, scarcity tests teamwork. In a competitive one, it tests strategy. Here it tests both because we live in a mix of cooperation and competition all the time. Not all the rules are about restriction. Some are about opportunity, but those come with their own hidden limits. You can learn new skills, build relationships, create things that didn't exist before. You can move to new places, change careers, start over entirely if you're willing to take the risk. But every opportunity has a cost in time, energy, or resources. And the rule about time moving forward means you can't take every opportunity that comes your way. You have to choose, and in choosing, you're tested. What makes these rules especially tricky is that they don't always reveal themselves right away. Some you learn through experience, others you never quite figure out even after decades. Sometimes you think you found a loophole,